Hello, my name is Tom, and today I'm going to show you how to turn any webhook into a polling API endpoint. So before we begin, why we would even want to do that, like webhooks are great for like real-time event notifications, but in some scenarios they're not the best fit. One example is that if you're testing locally, it's sometimes annoying to get an external URL in order to be able to test that. Even with tools like Swixplay and ngrok, it's still isn't that easy. So that in that scenario, like polling works better. But also it depends on your workload. Like some customers want those real-time notifications and some may just want to get, like a batch summary of all of the events that happened that day at the end of the day. And again, polling works much better because you can just get the data at your own leisure and also with strict ordering and really whatever you need. So like that, in that scenario, like polling may work better for you. And I'm sure there are other examples. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So to do that, we're going to use Swix ingest. So we can go to dashboard.swix.com/ingest. So just go to the dashboard, go to the ingest part, click on sources. I already have a source, but we're going to create a new one for this example. And I'm going to show an example with GitHub. So let's call this GitHub just to make our lives easier. And that's it. We created a source, or at least have created a source. We have the URL, and this is the URL we're going to use with GitHub's webhooks in a moment. And we also have the source type. So Swix ingest supports a variety of source types, including GitHub. So we're going to use that. And we're going to enable authentication because that's always a good thing. So we're going to take the ingest URL. Here it is. We're going to copy paste it. And we're going to go to GitHub. This is the main Swix repo. We're going to go to Swix webhooks, settings, webhooks, and then we're going to go to add webhook. We're going to put the URL from ingest here. We're going to change the type to JSON because JSON is much nicer. And we're going to put a secret. So let's put secret 123. Why not? Make it easy, but obviously in production, please use a higher entropy secret. Going to click add webhook. And that's it. We're now accepting webhooks to this URL. Let me put the secret here and click save. And we also finished creating the source now. I guess the first step we want to do, let's actually make sure it worked. So we're going to go to destinations. We're going to go to logs. And we can see a message here from GitHub. Let's click on this. And we see like an example message from GitHub. Great, that makes sense. They're sending us a nice JSON payload. So we know it works. That's great. Now the next step is to actually start polling. So we're going to go to endpoints, click on add endpoint. And one thing to note is that Swix ingest supports fanning out your incoming webhooks to as many endpoints as you want. So in this example, you can create a webhook one and just put whatever URL you want here, and you can create multiple of these. But for this example, we're going to create a polling endpoint, which again, you can be created in parallel with a normal webhook one. So I'm going to click create. And that's it. Now we have everything we need in order to start polling. So this is the API that we're going to poll. This is like an example, and you can see the API here, the API endpoint here. So let's create a key here. We need to give it some expiration. So let's give it a week. It expires in a week. And it's important to copy the key at this point because we're only going to show it once. Swix just only shows it once. So if we don't save it now, we're not going to have it later. So I'm going to copy paste it into my notes and going to click done. The next step is to start polling that endpoint. So this is the example that we're going to copy. This is a curl example, but you can use whatever HTTP library in your language of choice. I'm going to copy that into my terminal. Gonna change the API token to the one we just copied a moment ago. So I'm gonna pull in the terminal and let me just put it here. And let's call the API. And you can see we got back an empty response and we got back an iterator. The way it works is that it always returns an empty response when you call it without an iterator. So even though we already have a message, it's going to return an empty response. And the idea is that you always start iterating from that certain point in time. And then you can use the iterator to continue, from that point onwards instead of making, calls without an iterator. Let me show you actually how it looks like. So I'm going to have a terminal here. I'm going to just make a push to GitHub just so we can get another message here. So I'm gonna call this API again, but this time with the iterator set to the iterator from here, because again, if we make another empty call, another call without an iterator, it's gonna return an empty response. So let's call it here. And there we go. We got that message from GitHub. That's the message that corresponds to my latest push. I can show you again, actually. Let me make another call without an iterator. And you can see there's no iterator here. It gets you an empty response and a different iterator. But if we use the iterator again, we can get kind of like back from where we left off. And then, well, once fetching that, we can, let me just show you, we can remove this iterator and put the latest one that we just received. Oops. And you can see we got back an empty response. And if we're gonna get that, if we're gonna get another message, we're gonna see that message here, like when we make another API call. So really, that's it. Like now, we got what we needed. We now turned this GitHub webhook into a polling API that we can just poll continuously. Thank you.